Do you not accept that these individuals that have come out in public are making serious allegations about the leader's randomized acts of violence in different settings, in different places, to different individuals? These are the details of these attacks are worrying, because it's not three people in one room describing one event. These are randomized acts of violence.
Well, they're made to seem that way.
They're
not independent.
Tom de Vogt has described being personally hit.
If he was personally hit, then why in his 20 years of marriage to his wife did he never say anything to her about it? Why did Mike Rinder, who was married for 35 years, why has his wife made it very clear that never did he come home with any bruises, any marks, nor did he ever mention ever being attacked by Mr. Miscavige, struck or hit by him. In fact, Mike Rinder to the BBC stated repeatedly allegations of his having been physically attacked by Mr. Miscavige are rubbish, 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 rubbish.
That's absolute rubbish. Rubbish, rubbish.
In 1998, you told the St. Petersburg Times, and I quote, "I have never known David Miscavige in 20 years to hit anyone." So, were you lying then, or are you lying now?
Then.
Why did you speak to newspaper reporters and lie so blatantly?
Because at the time, I perceived that this guy was of the importance that we had to do that. If I told the truth to a newspaper reporter on something like that, I could have been expelled from Scientology forever.
Davis says not only has David Miscavige never been violent towards anyone, he says it was in fact Marty Rathbun himself who was the violent one.
The only person I know of who was abusive and cruel was Marty Rathbun. He was an abusive, cruel, and violent man.
I have admitted that I have engaged in stuff.
You are the perpetrator of violence yourself within the organization.
It wasn't in my nature whatsoever.
Rathbun admits that he was violent on many occasions, but says it was because Miscavige urged him to be physical, an allegation the church denies. Isn't that an excuse?
It's reality.
Isn't it easier to blame Mr. Miscavige than take personal responsibility?
Easier? No, not at all. He created an environment where he was getting others to do the same. And I broke down and I punched Mike Rinder pretty hard a couple of times.
A man you'd known for decades.
A man I'd known for decades. And that's precisely the thing. It made me feel terrible. It made me sick to my stomach.
In affidavits provided by the church, numerous current staff members describe seeing Rathbun attack Rinder and others and call Rathbun psychotic and a bully. Mike Rinder corroborated to ABC News that he was a victim of abuse at the hands of Rathbun. But violence, according to Bruce Hines, wasn't the only tool used to discipline staff.
I was assigned to the Rehabilitation Project Force, it's called, or generally known as the RPF.
The RPF is a disciplinary program for Sea Org members, which Hines says includes manual labour and intensive counselling.
The question they ask, was there an evil purpose or destructive intention that prompted you to commit that overt? After many hours of this, you start to come up with things like, oh, I guess I must really want to destroy mankind. Whew. Think about it. 6 years of that was a lot.
It is a program that members of the church's religious order do voluntarily and are given the opportunity to do if they're found to have failed in their duties. Bruce Hines says that when he was in the RPF, there were periods of time when he could not see his son.
In this case, where the RPF was also where the school was, and I would get to see him sort of run by in the distance sometimes, and we would kind of wave to each other. But I'm not allowed to actually talk to him.
I asked Tommy Davis what the church's current policy is on the RPF and the family. If somebody is married and they're sent to the RPF, are there controls placed on how much they can see their family?
There's specific policies which apply to the Rehabilitation Project Force, which govern how the person doing the program, what they do, what their schedule is.
And how much time in a week would an individual be allowed to see their family in the schedule?
I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head.
Once a week?
Probably, yeah, I would imagine. Once a week would sounds about right, yeah.
Does that sound appropriate?
I think so, yeah, sure.
During his time in the RPF, Bruce Hines says he received some sad news about his
At
marriage.
that time, I was married to another Sea Org member who was not in the RPF, and she so decided she wanted to divorce me. This was very, very common. Someone in the RPF, their spouse would divorce them because they would receive pressure to do it.
The church says it does not pressure couples to divorce. Bruce Hines left the church in 2003. He and his son, who also left, say they're considered to be suppressive people by the church, a Scientology term for antisocial personalities. As a result, they say close family members still in the church are no longer talking to them.
Did you lose family members?
I have 2 nieces who live in Clearwater, Florida, who won't talk to me. My sister's former husband, he won't talk to me. And my son, he was born in the Sea Org. He can't speak to his brother or his mother because they refuse it. He's out, he's now left, and because of that, he's suppressive, and so they're required to disconnect.
Bruce Hines' ex-wife told ABC News she disconnected from him and their son because she didn't want to have anything to do with anyone who lied about her church. Scientology told us they never force anyone to disconnect. Rathbun says that after he saw David Miscavige attack his friend Tom DeVocht, he finally cracked. Marty Rathbun says he decided to end his long career in the Church of Scientology after he saw longtime friend attacked by David Miscavige.
Martin, I swear to you, I was there, and it was that moment of truth for me where I either am going to put this guy's lights out for good, or I'm going to remove myself from the environment so I don't. And that literally was what was going through my head. I cannot stand to watch this. I cannot live with this anymore.
Scientology spokesman Tommy Davis says that is a lie.
These are all people who were removed either by Mr. Miscavige or by their peers for gross misconduct and malfeasance in their positions. We were glad that they were gone. And on top of that, the church has literally taken off explosively since they were gone. And frankly, to a large extent, because they're gone.
Since leaving the church, Marty Rathbun has said little about his experience until he gave a series of interviews to the St. Petersburg Times in Florida, published this summer. He set up a website inviting other Scientologists to make contact if they too are considering defection or have already left. He lives in an obscure location, far away from the power centres of the church.
What would you like to see happen to Mr. Miscavige?
I would like to see him cease his continuing abuses.
But you'd like to see him punished for what he's done?
I think he should have to pay the piper for what he's done. And what punishment that is, I don't know. Maybe the greatest punishment is the self-inflicted punishment of the recognition of what he's done.